Today I'm going to be talking about Porphyria's Lover from Robert Browning. We're still in the Victorian period. Browning is probably next to Tennyson as one of the most famous of the Victorian poets. Porphyria's Lover is one of Browning's first great poems. It was written when he was in his early 20s, and it's also one of the first great dramatic monologues in English verse, which this decade, the 1830s, Browning and Tennyson are both developing this genre, this dramatic monologue. A monologue is when we can see a poet adopting a persona and staging a soliloquy that's given oftentimes by a very unreliable speaker, and we're going to talk about that in regards to this poem. It's written in iambic tetrameter, which means there are 4 feet per line. That's 8 total syllables, so 2 syllables per foot. The basic beat is repeated. It's da-dum, so unstressed, stressed syllable pattern. It's repeated 4 times in each line. There are certain lines that do deviate from the 8-syllable norm. 7 of the lines in the poem have 9 syllables. Those are lines 6, 22, 24, 25, 33, 44, and 56. Browning also makes use of enjambment, which is the continuation of a sentence without a pause beyond the end of a line, couplet, or stanza. In multiple lines, he uses this technique, which combined with the above, that deviation of the syllables, kind of speaks to his mental state that in the poem. He's struggling with control, and we can see that in the way that it is written in this poem. So let's read, and then we'll discuss Porphyria's Lover. The rain set early into night. The sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite, and did its worst to vex the lake. I listened with heart fit to break. Wind glided in Porphyria straight. She shut the cold out and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up and all the cottage warm. Which done, she rose, and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl, and laid her soiled gloves by, untied her hat, and let the damp hair fall, and last she sat down by my side and called me. When no voice replied, she put my arm about her waist, and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and stooping made my cheek lie there, and spread o'er all her yellow hair, murmuring how she loved me. She, too weak for all her heart's endeavor to set its struggling passion free from pride and vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. But passion sometimes would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale for love of her, and all in vain. So she was come through wind and rain. Be sure I looked up at her eyes, happy and proud. At last I knew Porphyria worshipped me. Surprise made my heart swell, and still it grew while I debated what to do. That moment she was mine, fair, perfectly pure and good. I found a thing to do, and all her hair in one long yellow string I wound 3 times her little throat around, and strangled her. No pain felt she, I'm quite sure she felt no pain. As a shut bud that holds a bee, I warily oped her eyes again, laughed the blue eyes without a stain. I untightened next the tress about her neck, her cheek once more blushed bright beneath my burning kiss. I propped her head up as before, only this time my shoulder bore her head, which droops upon it still, the smiling rosy little head, so glad it has its utmost will, that all it scorned at once is fled, and I its love am gained instead. Porphyria's love, she guessed not how her darling one wish would be heard, and thus we sit together now, and all night long we have not stirred, and yet God has not said a word. If you had me for 102 last semester, whenever it was, we studied My Last Duchess by Robert Browning, where we had a speaker who was insane, and he shows his true nature throughout the course of the poem. He's struggling with control, and he uses those choppy rhyme pattern, and that use of enjambment. He's trying to maintain control, but he's kind of failing within. And this is very eerily similar to that in addition to just an eerily similar speaker as well. So what we have here at the very beginning is it's a dark and stormy night, right? Every good story starts that way. So, but it's no ordinary dark and stormy night. Browning is giving human emotions to the environment and the weather. The sullen wind is awake. It's tearing it's so strong that it's tearing the tops of the trees down for spite. It does everything in its power to vex the lake. And so this stormy weather is reflecting the state of being of our speaker, who is listening with heart fit to break. His emotional state is not in a good place, and he wastes little time creating tension and drama, positioning this speaker within the storm and the storm within the speaker as well. So lines 6 through 15, which next is when gliding in Porphyria Strait. Porphyria enters the scene with style. She glides in, which kind of evokes the image of this classic Victorian lady, heavy skirt trailing down to the floor. No sign of her legs. She's moving like she's on wheels. It's clear to us as the reader that Porphyria is of a higher social class than the male speaker. He's in a little cottage. He may be like a gardener or a groundskeeper or something like that. They're not of the same social class. She glides in like she owns the place, as if she walks on air rather than on the ground like us mere mortals. She also immediately takes the lead, suggesting that she's perhaps used to doing that. She's used to ordering servants to do her bidding, which is another hint of her kind of highborn status. She busies herself at the fire. She's cold and stormy outside. She feels need to boost the warmth in the room. She's so keen to get the fire going that she doesn't even acknowledge her lover's presence until several steps have already taken place. She's wet, so she takes off her cloak, her shawl, her dirty gloves because she's not used to slumming it. She takes off her hat. Her hair falls down as she sits down by her lover's side. And by letting her hair fall down in this way, she's giving out the signal that she's completely relaxed, because a woman would not have done this. They would have taken their hair down like right before bed, but their hair would have been up and restrained, not wild and down. Giving out, she's giving out very relaxed vibes. She's very relaxed in her lover's company. She's going to stay for a little while. He's using enjambment that we talked about, where one line runs into the next without pause, which done, she rose and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl. How that one line runs into the next line. She does that in 5. He does that in 5 out of the 10 lines that are in this section. Porphyria makes herself at home. The reader is kind of settling into, these two lovers are going to come together. It's a clandestine meeting, right? It's in the middle of the night. It's dark outside, and so it's not something they're doing, something that could not be done by the light of day. So she sits down and she calls him. She sat down by my side and called me, and he didn't respond. It's interesting that he uses the word called because it's kind of difficult for us to understand. Is Porphyria like attempting to get his attention? Is she simply voicing his name? What is happening here? But regardless, he's ignoring her. He doesn't respond. Perhaps he's angry. Perhaps he's too deep into his own thinking to reply. His feelings are hurt. He's in his feelings. Does he know this is going to be the end, the last time that they're together, and he's feeling, a lot of sadness about that? Like, we don't have the answers to that. So when he doesn't reply, she puts his arm about her waist and makes her shoulder bare. So she takes her hair, flops it to the other side, on the other side of her other shoulder, and makes the smooth white shoulder that's closest to him bare, and then forces his head down on her shoulder, and then kind of spreads her hair back out over the two of them. This is kind of a sexually inspired move for sure. She's increasing the intimacy between them because she's displaced her clothes on her shoulder, and she begins to murmur. She murmurs how much she loves him, and So she's, getting maybe the build up for some kind of passionate encounter between the two of them. And then we have his thoughts kind of break through there with that M dash, that long dash there in line 21. She too weak for all her heart's endeavor to set struggling passion free from pride and vainer ties dissever and give herself to me forever. He's reluctant. He's reluctant. We've seen him. He's not speaking to her. He's reluctant. She's having to force him to lay down on her shoulder. His thoughts are focused on her weakness, her pride, and her vanity. He's already beginning to doubt her feelings for him. He wants her forever. Okay. But she can't fully commit to him because of the ties that are not really detailed to us. We kind of get the hint that because she is above him in class and he is low born on the social scale, they cannot be together out in the open, which is why they have these clandestine meetings with each other. So this is the first time that we kind of get to hear his thoughts, like his inner thoughts, his true state of being. She's passionate enough, but that's not enough for him. Like, he wants her for all of her time. Okay, so lines 26 through 30 that starts with passion sometimes would prevail. At certain times in their relationship, they've been very passionate, and this was sufficient enough to kind of keep the relationship going. But now it's not enough for him. She has apparently left a party, a social gathering, to come and meet him. She ran through the weather, not ran. I'm sure she rode in a carriage, but at some point she got wet. But she left a party to be with him, and maybe it was a prearranged meeting, or did she decide to leave the party because she missed him? Like, what is the deal with that? We're not really quite sure, but he says it was all in vain. I said and thought of one so pale for love of her, and all in vain. Her coming will amount to nothing when all is said and done. And that right there almost gives away the intentions of the male lover. Everything is in vain. His heartbreak, her passions, his desire, her pride, the whole situation, their efforts together, it's all very useless. Okay? In lines 31 through 35, he looks up into her eyes because he needs to know if she's still in love with him. So eye-to-eye contact is something that is very intimate. It is something that we do in intimacy. So eye contact means there's little room for doubt if you want to know if somebody's telling the truth, right? If they're genuine. And so she seems to be, because she's happy and proud, and he knows that she worships him. And so surprise makes his heart swell. But it's only a weak undercurrent of love in him. And it's not strong enough to allow forgiveness or acceptance of the fact that she's not going to marry him. He can't he's debating there what to do with the very last little bit of that. In lines 36 through 41, he realizes that, it's the perfect time, right? That moment she was mine, fair, perfectly pure and good, and I found a thing to do. When he realized, when Porphyria's fate is sealed, when he realizes that the only way that he'll ever be able to stop her from leaving is to kill her. So he does. In a ritualistic, very psycho fashion, he uses her long hair to strangle her 3 times around her little throat, which kind of gives us a little bit of a fetish murder. It could be the religious maniac, someone who's sexually repressed. There's lots of schools of thought on all of that. I'm going to stop this screencast, and we'll pick up with just a few more comments, as well as the notes on Browning, the bio on Browning, in the next screencast.